I think what we're seeing now from Darragh is the quintessential scaremongering of the Remain side. I mean, to equate people who simply want to restore their democracy and their sovereignty with being fundamentally racist.
Some are.
I think,
frankly.
You effectively say you scratch the surface, that's what you're getting.
Well, you do.
Let me just go back on a few
Have a look at it.
First of all, this is a unique opportunity in the history of the European Union because it's the first time that the people of a country in the European Union have been asked whether they want to stay or whether they want to go. And why is that so unique? Because nobody in the European Union has ever voted on a specific question of whether they want to be sovereign and democratic or whether they want to be part of this so-called European superstate project. Okay? It is not nasty to say that you want to restore your sovereignty and your democracy. We're celebrating 100 years of our own sovereignty and democracy this year.
Who says we've lost it?
And well, let me just go on.
But you can't just say we want to restore our democracy and our sovereignty without explaining how you feel we lost it.
For example, 70% of the laws that we inscribe in our books here are actually diktats from Europe. Okay,
They're not
the Commission.
diktats
Excuse me. I didn't interrupt you. Can I have my say? So the point is they are diktats because they're undemocratic.
Well,
the Commission is unelected.
later.
The Commission is unelected. The President of the Commission is unelected. The President of the Council is unelected. The Parliament that Mairead is a member of cannot initiate law or repeal law. It can only rubber stamp what the Commission hands.
Sounds like you just don't want
democracy.
Britain out. You want Ireland out as well.
The point is, this is a unique opportunity not just for Britain, because I firmly believe that when Brexit happens, and I agree with David, the polls are now moving inexorably toward Brexit. I think when Brexit happens, this is going to ring a bell across Europe. And effectively what we're going to have is, for the first time in its entire history, we're going to have sovereignty and democracy firmly and openly on the table across Europe. And I think it's obvious. Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands in particular, and Austria will clamour for referenda on this. And I think at the very least, if we don't see those leaving the European Union, we will see the end of this Orwellian notion of ever closer union.
Paul, you're in favour of Brexit, but you don't want to see Ireland leaving. Am I right?
Well, I'm not in favour of having a referendum. We wouldn't campaign for a referendum in Ireland. But if there was a referendum tomorrow in Ireland, yes, I'd vote to leave. But what I'd put front and centre is the dignity, the living standards, the policies for ordinary people, as opposed to the interests of the euro or as opposed to the diktats of the European Union. Because the notion that the European Union has been good for Irish people, or people, ordinary working class people, the 99% anywhere in Europe, doesn't hold any water after the experience of the crisis. Right? The European Union, in cooperation with Fianna Fáil and the Greens, imposed the austerity that we went through. Over 30 billion euros worth of austerity. They also, not unrelated, imposed a bank bailout of 64 billion euros, 42% of the total cost of the European banking crisis for 1% of Europe's population. The European Union we have is not a social Europe in any sense whatsoever. It's a Europe that works in the interest of the 1%, in the interest of the bankers, and it's fundamentally undemocratic and it's fundamentally
Jeremy
irreformable.
Corbyn, Labour Party leader in the UK and Socialist, says reform it from the inside.
He does. He always, up until becoming the leader of the Labour Party, was against the European Union, and it came under, unfortunately, massive pressure. But look, let's examine the question of can it be reformed. Syriza adopted an approach that was wrong, in my opinion. They went to the Troika. They tried to convince the Troika that,
you went to Greece to support Syriza.
I did, and we advocated that they would stand up to the Troika and refuse to be blackmailed. And what happened? The European Central Bank, which is meant to guard the banking systems of Europe, deliberately crushed the Greek banking system to try to force the people to vote for austerity. There is no democracy within the European Union. If you have a left government, and if they're elected, and if they implement left-wing policies, they'll be fined. They'll be fined hundreds of millions or billions of euro, and they'll lose their vote at the European Council.
The one point that doesn't really stack up, I've got to take Paul up on this just real quick.
Is the problem not that we just don't know?
We don't know.
Well,
that's my point.
We
don't know. And that's my point.
Keith Redmond.
To get to this point, okay, like the only argument that the Remain supporters have is that they have to conflate Brexit with an absence or the abolition of trade. Okay, trade, as Darragh said, trade brings peace. Okay, trade brings affluence. Trade brings prosperity. That's what we've seen in Ireland. Trade, but Brexit has nothing to do with trade. And once you remove trade off the table, once you realise, as David said, pragmatism and realpolitik will kick in after Brexit.
It's nothing to do with trade.
It is not in anybody's interest to eliminate trade.
I don't understand that.
Let me explain this to you. It is not in anybody's interest to eliminate trade because it is mutually beneficial. Britain and the EU both benefit from trade. For example, do you really think that Angela Merkel is not going to want BMWs and Volkswagens sold in Britain? Are the French not going to want their wine and cheese sold in Britain?
That's true, Keith. But if you're Europe and you see that these guys have left, you're not very happy about it. So you're not going to make it easy for member states. Are you going to cut off your nose to spite your face by billions of jobs?
Trade is actually a reason.
Paul Murphy and then David.
Trade is a reason that people should vote leave in Britain.
Yes.
Right? The biggest free trade deal in the world is being negotiated at the moment between the EU and the US, where in reality there already is free trade. It's known as TTIP. And what it actually is, it's an agreement for a race to the bottom in terms of workers' rights, in terms of environmental rights,
not an agreement,
in terms of labour regulations.
Yeah.
But if the deal is done, that's
Still a
what
negotiation.
It would establish a set of courts known as the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism, whereby effectively they're private
could have a
courts
whole other debate on TTIP now.
where corporations... It's a key part of the topic because
Paul,
the EU is part of the corporations could take countries to court for not allowing them to profit. For example, Lone Pine in Canada has taken Canada to court for banning fracking. Vattenfall in Germany has taken Germany to court for having a moratorium. And this is a key. So the EU, I was on the trade committee in the European Parliament. This is a key part of the EU agenda, is a right-wing free trade agenda.
Right. But if you're selling steaks and butter to Britain, you're advocating that Britain should leave and that barriers should be put in place to trade, because there will be more. It'll be more difficult, won't it?
It won't be.
No, I'm not. I'm
trade is
advocating
mutually
that, for example, you have European Economic Area. I'm advocating that trade agreements will be done, right? That can clearly happen. But the point is, we need to have relations with other European states on a different basis than currently.
Yeah.
And I don't think that an exit and a left-wing government and left-wing policy, it just happens in one country in an isolated way.
Well, I don't
it's about creating a whole
understand.
series of left governments.
Darragh,
I think
having trade relations.
just very.
Okay, so can I explain that?
Do please, because
so
I'm at a
the
loss
point
to
is,
understand
we have to have a left government in this country, and you have to implement policies that put people's needs before profit. That would mean breaking a whole series of EU rules. Look at the last couple of weeks. Effectively, we cannot resolve the housing crisis through direct building of houses, which is what we need, because of EU rules.
Okay, so if the left agenda cannot progress because of Europe, why would you not campaign for a referendum? I don't get it.
So my point is that a left government would place those questions to the fore, would, for example, break those rules, would say we're not going to implement water charges, we're not going to pay the debt that's not our debt, we're going to build houses, and then deal with the consequences in terms of the EU. I don't think that means they'll kick you out. But you place those questions to the fore, and then join in a struggle with other people across Europe for a different sort of Europe. I mean, the European Central Bank is probably the most powerful unelected institution in the world, and it's destroyed people's lives and it's removed governments.
I don't think the issues that you're raising here are raised by David Cameron.
Relationship with the other tradition in the north, with the British tradition, the people who feel they can be British, Irish, and then in the safety of the European Union. Everything about the European Union is not bad, and some like Keith and Paul and others who are on the, I'm not saying they're on the exit side of things, but all that's being highlighted is, and there are issues in every institution. There's issues in the Irish Parliament, in Irish democracy. There's issues in every country's democracy. But if you look at the type of sovereign state that Paul and others may want to have, give me an example of something and how this is going to work. There's complete uncertainty about this. So the fundamental question is, would it be better for Ireland if Britain leaves? And would it make it easier to trade and interact with Britain, should Britain leave? Because of all the uncertainty, it's not going to make it easier. It's not going to make it easier.
But I think a British exit.
Okay, I'm not going to say any more now.
In fairness,
a British exit will dramatically pose questions about what kind of Europe that we have.
You don't care about the trade side of things. You don't care about it being made more difficult for Ireland to do business.
I care about it from the point of view of ordinary people and ordinary people's jobs, absolutely. Companies that are here to make profits will continue to be here to make profits. And governments that represent those trade interests and corporate interests will continue to do trade deals to try and ensure that they can make those profits. But the nature of the European Union, it's not like just undemocratic and maybe we could turn it around. It is becoming progressively more and more anti-democratic. It is impossible, in my opinion, to reform. And I think that there's a majority of people in Europe who are deeply alienated from the so-called European project because it's a project of the elites. And I think we need a very different sort of Europe that isn't on offer in this referendum. And I do want to make a point, because obviously the official leaders of the Leave campaign in Britain are people that I have nothing in common with politically. They're Little England nationalists, right-wing racists, as are the official leaders of the Remain side. Cameron and co. They're just as, well, almost just as racist, let's be clear. But there is a left.
Corbyn on that.
But there is a left. There is a left Leave campaign. I mean, Dennis Skinner came out yesterday for leave. The RMT union in Britain is for leave. The Tusk campaign is for leave. Socialists in Britain are
Sir
most
James
of socialists
Dyson
are for leave.
He's on your side too.
But the
man who
majority
made his fortune from selling stuff.
of the British ruling class will remain.
Claire, the former governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn Keith, has just he said that it's in Britain's interest to leave the European Union. The current governor said that it should stay. Yeah. It seems to be that the moment you leave office and you're no longer beholden to that kind of elite, you can actually be free to say what you want to say.
But it comes
back. It's in many cases. It comes back to what Darragh was saying earlier about the trade. Again, if you just listen to the argument of the people who want to remain, it always comes back to trade, because if they don't have trade, which they don't have, because realpolitik will kick in, if they don't have trade, they have no argument and they will lose. And that's why they're losing in the polls.
It's more than about trade. It's also about geopolitical issues. I mean, I think Putin is having a great time smoking a cigar on this one. He's loving this because it looks like Europe will not hold itself together. So there are important reasons why a strong European Union is good for citizens of the European Union. And from an Irish point of view, I would be much happier being part of a stronger European Union, a reformed European Union, where we...
British exit will dramatically pose questions about what kind of Europe that we have.
You don't care about the trade side of things. You don't care about it being made more difficult for Ireland to do business.
I care about it from the point of view of ordinary people and ordinary people's jobs, absolutely. Companies that are here to make profits will continue to be here to make profits. And governments that represent those trade interests and corporate interests will continue to do trade deals to try and ensure that they can make those profits. But the nature of the European Union, it's not like just undemocratic and maybe we could turn it around. It is becoming progressively more and more anti-democratic. It is impossible, in my opinion, to reform. And I think that there's a majority of people in Europe who are deeply alienated from the so-called European project because it's a project of the elites. And I think we need a very different sort of Europe that isn't on offer in this referendum. And I do want to make a point, because obviously the official leaders of the Leave campaign in Britain are people that I have nothing in common with politically. They're Little England nationalists, right-wing racists, as are the official leaders of the Remain side. Cameron and co. They're just as, almost just as racist, let's be clear. But there is a left.
Corbyn on that.
But there is a left. There is a left Leave campaign. I mean, Dennis Skinner came out yesterday for leave. The RMT union in Britain is for leave. The Tusk campaign is for leave. Socialists in Britain are
Sir
most
James
of socialists
Dyson
are for leave.
He's on your side too.
But the
man who
majority
made his fortune from selling stuff.
of the British ruling class will remain.
Claire, the former governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn Keith, has just he said that it's in Britain's interest to leave the European Union. The current governor said that it should stay. Yeah. It seems to be that the moment you leave office and you're no longer beholden to that kind of elite, you can actually be free to say what you want to say. But it comes back. It's in many cases. It comes back to what Darragh was saying earlier about the trade. Again, if you just listen to the argument of the people who want to remain, it always comes back to trade, because if they don't have trade, which they don't have, because realpolitik will kick in, if they don't have trade, they have no argument and they will lose. And that's why they're losing in the polls.
It's more than about trade. It's also about geopolitical issues. I mean, I think Putin is having a great time smoking a cigar on this one. He's loving this because it looks like Europe will not hold itself together. So there are important reasons why a strong European Union is good for citizens of the European Union. And from an Irish point of view, I would be much happier being part of a stronger European Union, a reformed European Union, where we would feel more secure and safer than to suggest that it becomes polarised and pulled apart. And I do think that in the way the world is, a more globalised world, the notion of disintegration at a time when you actually need a bit more integration with people working together.
No, we do not need more Europe. We do not need more Europe.
I said more integration where you work together on solutions. How would we solve the migration crisis and the asylum crisis without Europe working together?
Do you really think the European Union is an example of how to solve a migration crisis?
It's the best we have.
The Schengen Agreement has collapsed. It is not working at the moment. The Schengen Agreement has collapsed. Millions of people have come across the continent unchecked. That is not working.
What troubles me about your absolute definitiveness on everything, that the reality of the world's it's very hard to have that very steadfast view that you have and work with people.
But you have a steadfast view that the European Union is correct in everything that it does. And I'm saying to you that it's not.
I never ever used that word, because ever in my career in the European Parliament have I used the word everything in Europe is correct.
You used the words European citizen a moment ago, and Darragh used them as well.
Darragh,
do you think that you're a European citizen of a European country?
I'm Irish.
Keith and Mairead, thank you.
Darragh. It's not a country.
It's not a country. Ireland is a country.
Okay, look, all I say, if you take the crisis with regard to in the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, and the migration crisis that's there, of course Europe could act a lot better on that and should have. No, hold on, Keith, just hear me out on this one. But let's look at, if you take Germany as an example, which is at the centre of Europe, over 1 million refugees Germany has taken in. Okay, we have not dealt with it as well. Ireland's record on that is pathetic, frankly, so far. Sorry, Paul.
The European Union is implementing Donald Trump's policy. That's what it's doing. It's built a wall, which is called Turkey. It's paying Turkey €6 billion in order to take all the refugees, so Europe doesn't take them.
I wonder,
is there anything
policy of
anything good
discussing human rights abuser?
Is there anything good that you see in anything? Right? Probably not. The reality of it is, the best. Europe is not perfect. Certainly not. The European Union is not perfect. But when it's not perfect, you've got to fix it, and the best place to do that is from
unreformable.
All right,
it's interesting that Mairead was talking about Putin, and particularly Russia's involvement in Ukraine, which is obviously the big threat. But people seem to forget that the European Union sponsored a coup d'etat in Ukraine. And when the coup d'etat worked, they said, oh my God, what do we do now?